Homage to Shakyamuni Buddha, Manjushri, and compassionate lineage masters. Unsurpassed, profound Dharma is rare in eons. Now I see, hear, receive, uphold it. May I understand Tathagata's meaning. In order to liberate all sentient beings, I ask everyone to give rise to the Supreme Bodhicitta. Next, we will discuss the Platform Sutra of the Sixth Patriarch. Now we have indeed come to the truly significant part where the great Sixth Patriarch, Master Hoi Neng, profoundly composes his renowned formless Gatha. When he was preparing to compose the formless Gatha, as we mentioned earlier, because he was illiterate, a common challenge in those times, there was another person named Zhang Biejia who possessed the necessary literacy skills. Consequently, Zhang Biejia was specifically requested and appointed to act as a dedicated secretary, meticulously recording his verses on his behalf. At that particular moment in time, Mr. Zhang Biejia, a person of some standing, also looked down upon him quite a bit, it must be said. Then the Sixth Patriarch also said, "You must not belittle or disparage others." Well, now at this very moment when they were taking their herbal medicine, they did not let me have any at all. Sometimes, right there at the very entrance, at the door, they insist on making me consume various food items that I genuinely do not wish to eat despite my reluctance. And then, on other occasions, no matter what I say or do, they refuse to provide me with the specific beverage that I want to drink. That particular time, Hui Neng said, "You should not, in any way, belittle beginners. Some people who seem to be of the lowest rank actually possess the highest wisdom, while some who appear to be of the highest rank don't truly have real insight. This kind of situation also quite frequently exists." I also thoroughly explained this fundamental principle to everyone present in the last class, as you may recall. I hope that after we study the Dharma, at the very least, there will be some changes in our own behavior. Some things we can change completely, and in some areas we can at least make progress compared to before. I've noticed that many Buddhists often focus on the faults of others, and it's quite serious. I think this is something we really need to change. In the last class, I also gave some examples. The manifestations of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are truly inconceivable. We cannot easily or readily judge or accurately measure them. On the surface, it may indeed seem quite unreasonable or even entirely improper, and some people, in terms of their outward appearance or their overall behavior, seem quite noticeably inferior, perhaps even significantly so. But it's very possible that among them are manifestations of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. In the past, when Elder Master Shuyun was making a pilgrimage to Mount Wutai, he traveled from Mount Putuo to Mount Wutai, a distance of about 3,000 to 4,000 miles. Throughout this long journey, he made his way there by prostrating every 3 steps. During this process, there was a time when he was both hungry and cold, and he was almost at the point of losing his life. At that moment, Manjushri Bodhisattva manifested as an old man named Wenji. He appeared along the way and helped Master Shuyon carry his belongings. However, when they eventually arrived at the revered monastery situated on the sacred Mount Wutai, he mysteriously disappeared without a trace. In the recently made cinematic production, A Century of Shuyon, it appears that the latter, subsequent part of this intriguing and significant story is regrettably not included. However, in his biography and some historical records, this is described very clearly. In fact, many of the biographies of these eminent monks and great masters from the Han region, including some directors, as for A Century of Zhuyun. At that time, Elder Master Ben Huan and several other great masters served as consultants. But sometimes they are too busy to consult and only ask when they have time. Maybe these people simply didn't have the chance to consult. It's hard to say. Some of the scenes in the film are really good and inspire faith in people, but are some of the scenes really necessary? If you look at it from a worldly perspective, are they necessary or not? It's also hard to say whether these parts were in the original biography or not. So here, I don't think it's necessary for me to comment, especially when we're supposed to be observing a pure mind. No matter what, when Master Shion was making his pilgrimage to Mount Wutai, prostrating every 3 steps, his physical appearance at the time was truly pitiable. You couldn't tell at all that he would one day become such a remarkable spiritual master. At that time, the old man, who was actually Manjushri Bodhisattva's manifestation, was also he seemed to lack wisdom, education, or any spiritual attainment. But later, as everyone knows, the manifestations of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are everywhere. Therefore, at any time, if we all maintain a mindset of observing with a pure heart, we will often refrain from speaking about others' faults in daily life. Otherwise, some of us might have this tendency due to karmic habits from past lives. We are born with a habit of being dissatisfied with this or that. Except for ourselves, we can't stand anyone else. Even if we interact with someone for just 10 or 8 minutes, they will point out the faults of many people. There are indeed such people. Some people, no matter how long you interact with them, never like to talk about others' faults. Even if they sometimes notice something improper or unreasonable in others, they will try their best not to mention it unless it is absolutely necessary. I've seen some people, including those in our study group, who have been learning for such a long time, but now, from the way some people speak, you can still tell they basically don't care about faults in their speech. It seems like there are no restraints, but actually, this kind of behavior is very bad. I hope that after learning these teachings, many of us will realize that the manifestations of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are truly beyond the prediction of ordinary people's perspectives. Therefore, we should try our best with all sentient beings. Didn't I mention this a couple of days ago? Even towards non-Buddhists, if our teacher wishes to manifest, no matter what type of non-Buddhist, if our teacher wishes to be, it should be capable, because among the manifestations of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, some appear as prostitutes, some as butchers, some as blind or disabled people, and there are all kinds of people in particularly lowly positions. So I think if we can maintain a pure view towards everyone, then there is nowhere that practice cannot be found. Wasn't there someone by Atisha's side who had a particularly bad temper and a very strong tendency toward anger? Many people suggested to Atisha, shouldn't you change your attendant? Your attendant is too poor in conduct, arrogant in every aspect of dealing with people. Atisha replied to them, no, I can't. If I change him, then from whom will I cultivate the perfection of patience? On one hand, I myself need to practice the perfection of patience. On the other hand, he is not such a bad person. So he was always unwilling to change attendance, and there was a reason for that. Actually, for these true practitioners, whatever they encounter is fine. If you look at Atisha's biography, you'll see he placed great emphasis on study in his daily life. And I think many of us nowadays seem to lack this kind of spirit. He was familiar with all the scriptures and tantras of the Tibetan Kangyur. He read through all of them, and after finishing, he told some of his disciples, because there are too few scriptures and treatises in the Tibetan Kangyur, my profound faith has now truly started to wane. This is because in the vast and ancient land of India, the sacred scriptures and philosophical treatises are as boundless and expansive as a deep, endless ocean. There are simply so many of them. Consequently, he expressed that his deep-seated faith has significantly diminished. Actually, I really feel the same way. For all of us here, whether in the institute or in any other setting, we must never give up our daily study and contemplation. If you read books and study on your own, or frequently listen to the Dharma, if you give this up, gradually your faith and understanding will both change and diminish. That's why the Institute requires that you at least attend one class so that some aspects of your practice can be maintained. If you go a long time without studying or contemplating and rarely interact with the monastic community, including lay practitioners in the city, if you don't attend teachings for a long time, then in the end, your own mental continuum will be completely transformed into something else. So, in all these important respects, everyone absolutely must be fully aware and truly understand this, and you should try your very best not to slander or speak ill of others in any way. Otherwise, if you do, you will inevitably accumulate boundless and immeasurable negative karma. Next, it is clearly stated that at that particular time, Zhang Bieji completely agreed with what was said. On one hand, the sixth patriarch also told him not to disparage others, and on the other hand, he had a request. At that time, he said this to Huineng. Zhang Bieji said, you just recite the verse and I will write it down for you. If you attain the Dharma, you must first help me attain liberation. Do not forget these words. Zhang Bieji said this to the sixth patriarch. If you truly and genuinely want to compose such a unique and formless verse, that is perfectly fine. You can certainly recite it, and I will diligently write it down with my pen. I can indeed act as your personal secretary. But I have a very important and earnest request here, a profound plea that I must convey to you. What exactly is this significant request? If your profound verse, the one you are about to present, truly succeeds this time, and if in the future you are fortunate enough to obtain the sacred Dharma and its complete and authentic transmission, then it would be of the utmost importance and truly best if you would first extend your compassionate assistance to me, helping me to attain ultimate liberation from suffering. You must never, under any circumstances, forget this solemn and sacred vow that we are making here today. At that time, perhaps Huineng couldn't find anyone else to write it down for him, so he might have tacitly agreed. Here, it's not explicitly stated that he accepted, just like in the extensive biography of the Buddha, the 5 bhikshus also made vows in front of the Buddha at that time. They requested that when the Buddha attained enlightenment in the future, he would first teach the Dharma to them. There were many similar requests that have been made, much like this one. As for whether it actually materialized later on, we will need to see when that moment arrives. It's likely it did, right? Later, the 6th Patriarch accepted him, didn't he? You all have studied the Platform Sutra, right? I don't really remember it clearly. I think I might have read it once before, perhaps a long time ago. Wow. You are just like me in so many ways. We really, truly should make an effort to study the profound teachings of the Platform Sutra. After the 6th Patriarch, the Venerable Huineng, attained the Dharma, did he immediately liberate others first, or did he focus on something else initially? Next, the enlightenment verse of the 6th Patriarch Huineng goes like this. Huineng's verse says, Bodhi originally has no tree, the bright mirror is not a stand. Originally there is not a single solitary thing, so where indeed could any dust possibly alight upon it? This profound question arises because, as you may recall, earlier Shen Xiu had thoughtfully used the metaphor of the human body being very much like the sacred Bodhi tree. Here it clearly states, originally Bodhi has no tree at all. The mind is like a bright mirror, but here it says the bright mirror does not truly exist, nor is it a stand. Since there is originally no real tangible thing, how could there possibly be any dust or any obstacles whatsoever? He thoughtfully composed such a profound and meaningful verse. As for this particular verse, I believe I have already thoroughly explained its intricate details and deeper significance to everyone present in a previous comprehensive class session. In some of the various different versions of this particular text, the initial 2 lines are indeed precisely the same. But for the latter, subsequent part, where the original phrasing states, originally there is not a single thing, in certain alternative versions it is expressed as, Buddha nature is always pure. Furthermore, in other distinct versions, for example, the historically significant Dunhuang manuscript, there is an additional separate verse that follows immediately after. But as for which version is correct, there are different opinions, because the Zongbao version is widely recognized for this verse. In other versions, such as the Dunhuang manuscript and some others, there is also the addition, the mind is like the Bodhi tree, the body is like a mirror stand. And also, the mirror is originally pure, where could dust alight? There are such profound and meaningful verses as well. Many people, including some esteemed scholars who diligently study Chan Buddhism today, often ponder these very questions and their deep implications for spiritual understanding and personal enlightenment. Some senior masters and great virtuous ones also have different ways of interpreting this. I think, as we mentioned earlier, Bodhi is fundamentally without a tree. The bright mirror is also not a stand. Actually, this verse is equivalent to what Buddhism calls mere emptiness. It does not fully expound the prajna emptiness of the second turning of the Dharma wheel, which is free from the 4 extremes and the 8 elaborations. But indeed, it teaches that all phenomena, whether body or mind, in the entire world, everything is non-existent, just like how Master Tsongkhapa and Mifam Rinpoche, for beginners, first expounded the profound view of emptiness that effectively refutes the first extreme of inherent existence. On the fundamental level of this comprehensive view of emptiness, any conceivable obstacle, including the very intrinsic nature of the obstacle itself, also absolutely does not exist. Therefore, explaining a phenomenon as empty is also very reasonable. I remember in the past, Elder Master Ben Huan, at the age of 102, at that time, it seemed there was a reporter from the Yangcheng Evening News. He asked Elder Master Ben Huan, "You have studied Buddhism your whole life. What exactly have you realized? What have you awakened to?" Elder Master Ben Huan replied, "Emptiness, nothingness. What I have awakened to is nothingness." At that particular time, the persistent reporter pressed further, saying, "In the profound tradition of Chan Buddhism, it is often said that truly, originally, not a single thing truly exists. Do you perhaps have a compelling story or a vivid anecdote to clearly illustrate this profound and central point about emptiness or the concept of nothingness?" At that time, Master Ben said, "Originally, not a single thing exists. Where could dust alight?" He used this principle to explain everything to him. Whether it's life and death or all phenomena, in their essence, they do not exist. They are empty in nature. After he finished speaking, the reporter immediately asked, "Originally, not a single thing exists, and constantly polish and wipe," the verse by Shenshu that we mentioned earlier. Between constantly polish and wipe and originally not a single thing exists, which of these two states is higher? Later, Master Ben also replied, "No matter what. These two states in the end both point to a kind of emptiness where nothing exists at all. This should be the most ultimate state." Then he asked, "So have you attained Buddhahood now?" Master Ben said, "How could I have attained Buddhahood? I'm still far from it. I'm just a little monk. To attain Buddhahood, one must benefit all sentient beings, form extensive connections with them, and so on." He explained some principles. So I think regardless of which great master from the past we're talking about, actually the true meaning of this verse. We also cannot definitively state that the sixth patriarch was completely and fully enlightened at that particular moment in time. However, it is undeniably true that, when compared to the earlier and more conventional perspective held by Shenshu, there was a significant and noticeable difference in understanding and spiritual realization. He did have a certain level of realization. The previous one was basically from a worldly, conventional perspective. It was a verse about practicing virtuous deeds, as everyone knows. Here it cuts off certain attachments to the body, to the mind, and to all things. It is a kind of emptiness where all attachments are completely severed. From the literal meaning, it seems he did not discern that even emptiness does not exist. Emptiness is also free from all conceptual elaborations and all attachments. This aspect was not discerned. Of course, everyone's capacity for understanding and their level are different. If you go a step further and interpret it as the great emptiness, that is also not out of the question. However, it is primarily from its literal and straightforward meaning that this particular verse, when carefully considered and thoroughly analyzed, should be comprehensively understood and interpreted in this specific and precise manner. After this profound and impactful verse was eloquently written, all the assembled disciples were utterly astonished, truly marveling and excitedly exclaiming to each other in profound wonder and disbelief, "How amazing! One really cannot judge a person by their appearance. How could we have let him serve as a living bodhisattva for so long?" At that particular time, the profound verse composed by Master Huineng was carefully written down and recorded by Zhang Biejia, a respected official. No one knew whether his handwriting was good or not. Some prominent leaders possess truly terrible handwriting, while in stark contrast, others are actually quite decent and legible. After he had meticulously finished writing, he then proceeded to review his work. Where exactly did he actually write it? Was it right next to Shenshu's writing? He just wrote it there at that very spot. After it was carefully written, many people who were present, including all the assembled followers at that significant time, were deeply moved, were extremely astonished and full of praise. There wasn't a single person who wasn't amazed, not a single one who wasn't astonished. Everyone kept discussing it, passing the news among themselves. They all said it was truly rare and that we absolutely must not judge a book by its cover. We absolutely should not, under any circumstances, judge a person solely by their outward appearance or their superficial image. Indeed, we truly must not ever do that. At what precise moment or through what profound transformation did he genuinely become such a remarkably living, compassionate, and truly enlightened bodhisattva? They all felt this way, because usually everyone knew he was diligently pounding rice there, a laborious and humble task. In that particular place, he should have been unequivocally considered a layperson, someone without formal religious or social standing. He also looked notably haggard, marked by visible signs of fatigue and hardship, and others tended to frequently and readily look down on him with disdain and a lack of respect. After he wrote down this verse, everyone was very surprised. Everyone universally felt that you absolutely must not judge others solely by their outward appearance, their superficial characteristics, or the initial impressions they present, as true character and worth are often hidden beneath the surface and require deeper understanding and consideration Indeed, at that particular moment in time, they were also acutely able to sense and perceive it. To be completely honest and forthright, a person's social status, their outward appearance, and certain observable behaviors they exhibit are not necessarily reliable or definitive indicators of their true nature or intentions, based on our extensive and comprehensive long-term practice experience and observations over many years. Some people at the beginning are proper and in accordance with the Dharma in every aspect and do very well. It seems their wisdom is good and their practice is also commendable. But in the end, not only do they fail to contribute to Buddhism, sometimes there is even slander and all sorts of improper behaviors that emerge. Some people at first may seem especially pitiful. You might even wonder if this person has some mental issues. The way they walk, talk, eat, and behave in various ways is a bit odd. But later on, they gradually show higher understanding. This kind of situation also exists. Even during the Buddha's time, there were such cases as mentioned in the Samyutta Agama Sutra. Once, when the Buddha was teaching the Dharma to a large assembly at Jetavana Monastery, a bhikshu arrived. This particular bhikshu looked especially unattractive, indeed quite unsightly, and was extremely haggard, appearing utterly worn out. He looked very pitiful, truly a sight to behold, just sitting there, completely still and forlorn. All the monks felt a bit of aversion toward this monk and looked down on him. Everyone thought there was something wrong with him, and privately they all spoke poorly of him. At that time the Buddha, aware of their thoughts, said, "Monks, you should not so easily slander others, nor judge people by their appearance. This person is already a noble one who has attained the fruit of arhatship." The Buddha further explained many things to them. For example, a peacock may look beautiful on the outside, but when it comes to flying, it cannot soar through the sky like a wild goose. There are also some fools whose outward behavior seems proper and in accordance with the Dharma, but in reality their inner state is not as good as it seems. The Buddha gave some teachings on this, mentioning that some practitioners are indeed very good and so on. So from this we can see that in the days to come, many people do tend to judge others by their appearance. They think, this person looks like they must be quite good. Even some lamas and some followers have high expectations for such people. Their worldly status, their social standing, and their academic credentials are all quite remarkably impressive. But later on, they unfortunately develop profoundly wrong views and consequently don't have much of a promising future ahead of them. This particular phenomenon is quite commonly observed and is indeed very widespread. For example, among most of the people present here today, sometimes it may not be obvious. In fact, His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok also mentioned before, "Among my current followers there is an unremarkable little novice monk, who after I pass away may very well accomplish great things in the future. Such things do happen." Back when His Holiness was studying in Sershul, I have also asked some of the older practitioners from those days. Actually, at that time, His Holiness was not very well known there. It was just that the master was especially fond of him. Among the monks below, he was not famous, and he didn't stay there for long, only a total of 6 years altogether. But later, his profound and significant contributions to the development of Buddhism and his ultimate realization were truly incomparable in many, many ways. So, as I have mentioned and discussed earlier in our everyday daily lives, at that time among all the disciples, the sixth patriarch, not to mention compared to Shenxiu, even when compared to ordinary, everyday novices or regular devout monks, he probably couldn't measure up to them. Everyone thinks of the incorruptible bodhisattva, the flesh body bodhisattva, and generally speaking, there is a kind of, not like Avalokiteshvara or Manjushri bodhisattvas, who have the adornments of the enjoyment body, but in appearance, their bodies look just like ordinary people. But in fact, those with inner realization are also called flesh body bodhisattvas. Nowadays, in Han Chinese regions, what are often referred to as flesh body bodhisattva statues, such as the one at Mount Juhua and the statue of the sixth patriarch's flesh body, these are also called flesh body bodhisattva statues. Actually, no matter how you understand it, if we speak generally, this bodhisattva, when did this living bodhisattva first appear? Perhaps people of that time also had a higher level of realization. Generally, when someone composes a verse, it's hard to tell whether they are a flesh body bodhisattva or a manifested bodhisattva. But at that time, people might have placed special importance on these states of realization. Everyone talked about it this way, and at that time, the patriarch saw that everyone was astonished and afraid someone might cause harm, so he wiped away the verse with his shoe, saying, "He has not yet seen his true nature." Everyone agreed with this. When the fifth patriarch saw this situation, with everyone discussing and making a big fuss about it, he became concerned that some people because at that time the position of Chan Buddhism was highly valued by everyone, and there were also disputes about this matter. It was as complicated as elections in various places nowadays. So, in this process, why was it that after the sixth patriarch, the transmission could no longer continue? At that time, all sorts of worldly phenomena might have occurred as well. There was a fear that harm might come to the sixth patriarch. Then, in front of all the disciples, he used the sole of his straw sandal to wipe off all the verses that the sixth patriarch had written on the wall. And he said in front of everyone, he has not attained enlightenment either, nor has he realized his true nature. So everyone thought, since the master said so, maybe he really hasn't realized his true nature. This matter was thus settled. Otherwise, at that time, perhaps Shenshu's side would have said that he hadn't passed the test yet. Then suddenly someone like the rice pounder might emerge, and there was a fear that the transmission would not be complete in the future. So, judging from the actions of the fifth patriarch, on one hand, he was especially attentive to the emotions of all the disciples around him, and on the other hand, regarding the future transmission of the Dharma to the sixth patriarch, it is evident that he possessed many truly skillful and profound means. Generally speaking, we also know that for verses expounding upon the profound concept of emptiness, using merely the sole of a shoe to casually wipe them off does not seem at all very proper or respectful in any sense of the word. But when necessary, for some truly exceptional and profound masters who possess extraordinary clairvoyance and who genuinely and deeply understand certain intricate and esoteric meanings, this is also quite reasonable, and there is absolutely nothing at all unreasonable about it. At that particular time, no one actually said anything whatsoever. The very next day, the Venerable Patriarch quietly and discreetly went to the rice-pounding shed, and there he saw Huineng diligently pounding rice with a heavy stone tied securely to his waist, and the Patriarch thoughtfully said, "A true seeker of the way should completely forget their physical body for the sake of the profound Dharma, should it truly be like this, so arduous and demanding." After that significant day, the fifth Patriarch quietly, or more accurately secretly, began to observe Huineng more closely. He went directly to the rice-pounding shed, a simple structure, where Huineng was diligently working. He then saw Neng, which was indeed Huineng. He observed that Master Huineng had a remarkably large stone securely tied to his waist while he was actively pounding rice. It seems this was also shown in the original documentary. At that particular time, one significant reason was that Huineng was very thin and quite weak, and consequently he couldn't effectively pound rice. It's much like a seesaw operates nowadays. He started pounding rice over there with one foot stepping on it here. If your body is especially light, there's nothing you can do. So he tied a particularly large stone to himself to practice asceticism this way. For most people, this is indeed extremely difficult. So when we set our intention, we should think about people like the sixth patriarch, who had a certain level of realization. Although nowadays we don't need to do this. Sometimes I see that some Dharma friends in our academy, especially in winter, some participate in volunteer work for the sake of the monastic community and some for themselves. Today I saw many Dharma friends carrying coal on their backs. Some even drew mustaches on themselves, including the women. Maybe they kept holding the coal in their hands, and in the end, who knows how it happened. But it's still perfectly acceptable and completely okay. This, in its essence, is also a profound and valuable form of ascetic practice. Regardless of the specific circumstances or the challenges we face, participating in volunteer work are extraordinarily important and hold immense significance. Just now, the master had already arrived at the place where he was working. He observed that the sixth patriarch was especially diligent and remarkably capable, and for more than 8 full months he never once left. He only ventured out once with a novice monk in order to write a verse. Other than that particular instance, he basically stayed there the entire time. The fifth patriarch acknowledged this very much and said, "Those who seek the way, those who seek Buddhahood for the sake of the Dharma, should forget their physical bodies. Acting this way is entirely reasonable. In fact, these teachings are truly profound. Ordinary people in the world also, for the sake of their own lives and happiness, for the fundamental necessities of life, such as obtaining sufficient and nourishing food, securing safe and comfortable shelter, individuals often find themselves compelled to make numerous and substantial sacrifices, dedicating considerable effort and resources to these pursuits. All the more so when it comes to something that benefits us for countless lifetimes, the extremely precious Dharma. Why indeed shouldn't we practice austerities? Austerities, in fact, are truly and absolutely necessary for our spiritual growth and well-being. At that time, he was clearly informed that for the profound and essential sake of upholding the Dharma, which represents the universal truth and righteous principles, one should indeed undertake this specific and necessary action. I once read in the biography of a Lama, he explicitly stated that in the distant past he could vividly recall many of his own previous past lives stretching back through time. He said, "In the past I also practiced many austerities just for a single verse." I don't know why now I seem to lack such strong faith in the Dharma. Why is that? In his biography, it is written that in his previous lives, and even lives before that during this process, just as described in the Sutra of Wise and Foolish, he dug many holes in his own body and often practiced austerities just for the sake of 4 lines of verse. Why is it that in this very life there isn't such strong faith in the Dharma? Actually, some great masters in different lives and different environments, under different circumstances, may experience increases or decreases in their faith in the Dharma. Such situations are also recorded in the biographies of saints. Some Dharma friends among us often say, "When I first arrived, my faith was especially strong. Why do I keep getting sleepy lately? Now my faith in the Dharma is gradually fading. It seems like my practice is declining more and more. What should I do?" Some people might feel sad or worried about this kind of situation. Actually, for some individuals, this might indeed be a perfectly normal phenomenon. But precisely because it truly feels like your unwavering faith is gradually fading away at this critical time, you absolutely should not lose heart or faith. Instead, you should make an even more profound and dedicated effort. You truly need to understand that the arduous path of spiritual practice may at times sometimes make you feel like, did I become enlightened today? Or do I have to do this or that today? It feels like you're especially confident at that time, but you also shouldn't get overly excited. Sometimes you might think, oh, everything is over. You see, now I've developed wrong views again, and there's nothing special going on in my mind. At that time, you also shouldn't feel especially hopeless or disappointed. You still need to make an effort and maintain a balanced mind. It's like someone traveling a long distance who often sees both high mountains and flat plains along the way. There are different states. Let's not even talk about the experiences of ordinary people. Even in the minds of sages, when they recall 200 past lives, the circumstances and situations in each individual's life are truly different and unique. So everyone, please do not be overly anxious or worried about your own path. In short, in order to diligently study and understand the profound Dharma, back then the revered sixth patriarch, later on, it seemed that even his knees became dislocated and he was in great pain, but he never complained and kept working for the Sangha. When someone truly practices, the first thing is to completely destroy our arrogance. If you want to destroy arrogance, in actual practice, you either perform full prostrations. I really admire those people who often make the pilgrimage to Lhasa, doing full body prostrations along the way. I think to myself, no matter what, regardless of their motivation, the first thing worthy of praise is that they have a sincere faith in the 3 jewels from the bottom of their hearts. Otherwise, it would be impossible to do it at all. Secondly, by doing this, their arrogance will definitely be destroyed in their mind stream. So I think for myself as well, every morning I spend some time doing prostrations, because doing prostrations, for one thing, helps me wake up. This is also a method. Secondly, I truly feel that there are indeed many significant merits and profound benefits in this particular practice. I sincerely hope that in your personal practice, you will most definitely cultivate and maintain a strong, unwavering faith in the sacred Dharma. Please do not be exceptionally diligent and enthusiastic for just a mere 2 or 3 days, only to then become very lax, negligent, and unmotivated afterward. That kind of approach is not very reasonable. Later, the venerable master, at that time the 5th Patriarch Hongren, inquired of Master Huineng. He specifically asked, "Is the rice thoroughly cooked yet?" Huineng promptly replied, "The rice has long since been cooked, it merely needs to be sifted." He used a very skillful and indeed quite clever way to ask, "Is the rice you have diligently pounded now truly ready?" He didn't mean cooked. That's certainly not the intended meaning at all. He was specifically asking if the rice had been thoroughly and properly pounded well. Then Huineng, with his characteristic wisdom, said, "The rice has already been completely and thoroughly pounded. But now, what's still lacking and yet to be done is that it hasn't been carefully sifted through the sieve yet, a crucial final step." Actually, this is also a kind of double entendre. The profound meaning is, in your spiritual practice, have you now truly attained a great realization, a deep understanding? Because at that time, in front of everyone, they used this kind of language to communicate with each other. Huineng replied, "Actually, when I composed and wrote this verse earlier, I had indeed attained a certain profound degree of spiritual enlightenment. However, I still truly need, much like grains of rice that still absolutely need to be carefully sifted through a fine sieve, to continue diligently refining and purifying my understanding. It still requires requires the master's confirmation. If one receives the master's confirmation, then the undesirable dross, like the coarse husks and other such unwanted discriminations, can be completely and effectively eliminated. The true, pure, and unblemished wisdom, bright and upright, much like pristine white rice, can then fully and clearly manifest itself. He should already possess some realization regarding the aspect of emptiness. Actually, from the perspective of emptiness, it should be said that this is a certain state of realization. From the content of the Buddha's second turning of the Dharma wheel, it can be considered a very high state of realization. As we mentioned earlier, all phenomena are originally without a single thing. Originally, there is not a single real entity to be found. Such a state of emptiness should be no different from nirvana. There seems to be a scripture called the Mahayana Crown King Sutra. In the Mahayana Crown King Sutra, it says, all things are unborn, seeking their self-nature is also in vain, because self-nature does not exist. This is the mark of nirvana. This means that nothing is ever truly produced, and there is no inherent nature. Because there is no inherent nature, Nirvana, in its profound essence, is also no different. Nirvana is simply that. Here it is metaphorically said that the rice has been cooked for a very long time already, indicating a state of complete readiness and profound spiritual maturity. This statement specifically refers to the significant period when he first came into the presence of the revered fifth patriarch. On the very first day he arrived, he already had some realization, perhaps due to his past lives or from a young age. On the surface, it seems that he was a barbarian, a member of the southern Aboriginal tribes, and also just a woodcutter. From his appearance, even the young novice monks couldn't stand him. Even children looked down on him. He was that kind of person. But in reality, internally, it's like the analogy of the 4 types of mangoes we talked about. Just as some mangoes look unripe on the outside but are already ripe inside, there are people like that too. Some people may look very mature on the outside. Some practitioners, whether in the way they walk or talk, everything about them seems to show a very high level of realization. But in reality, their inner greed, anger, and ignorance haven't diminished at all. There are people like this too. At that time, when the 6th patriarch had just started out, on the outside, he was always pounding rice all day long, living as an ascetic. But internally, he had already gained some realization of emptiness. However, even though he had gained some profound realization of the fundamental emptiness of all phenomena, according to certain specific interpretations within the rich traditions of Tibetan Buddhism, particularly when it comes to the subtle and luminous aspect of primordial awareness, it might still genuinely require the master's further, more explicit confirmation and guidance. After that, he could achieve complete enlightenment. So here it shows that among many people, it seemed that at the time on the surface, they were just asking him questions. It seems that at the time he was also asked, according to other sources or as mentioned in the documentary, the 5th patriarch also asked him, "Does your body hurt from such ascetic practice?" He replied, "Since there is fundamentally no body, what pain could there be?" Actually, when the 5th patriarch spoke to him, he was always responding to the master using Chan riddles. The master originally asked, "Does your body hurt?" And he replied, "If there is no body, what pain could there be?" If it were me, I would start to question him. If you have no body, what pain could there be? I might even say a couple more things to him, because I was sincerely asking, "Does your body hurt?" But he replied, "If there is no body, what pain could there be?" These things indicate that at the beginning, his realization was probably an insight into emptiness. Including the verses he wrote earlier, as I just mentioned, from my own discriminating mind, it seems that what he was always talking about was the state of emptiness. The patriarch struck the mortar 3 times with his staff and left. Huineng immediately understood the patriarch's intention and entered the room at the 3rd watch. The patriarch used his robe to shield them from view and recited the Diamond Sutra for him. When he heard the words, "Let your mind arise without dwelling anywhere," Huineng was instantly enlightened, realizing that all phenomena are inseparable from one's own nature. Here it says that just now, at the place where the 6th patriarch was practicing asceticism, the mortar room, he was communicating with him in this way, and during the process of their exchange, later, at that moment, the master hit the vessel within that space, the mortar room, where he had just been engaging in asceticism with his own staff. He hit it 3 times upon its surface, the upper part. After hitting it 3 times, the master had already departed from the area and then returned. At that moment, Huineng had already grasped the master's, the 5th patriarch's, profound intention. He struck 3 distinct times, which clearly meant the 3rd watch of the night. Indeed, 3 strikes specifically signified the 3rd watch of the night. I've heard it said that the legendary Monkey King, Sun Wukong, a prominent figure in classic Chinese literature, also employed this particular method. Indeed, many captivating stories and ancient tales concerning Sun Wukong contain this very kind of profound content. After the revered fifth patriarch struck precisely 3 times, he quietly departed. Huineng, with his profound insight, had already fully grasped and understood his deeper meaning. The 3 drum beats specifically referred to the 3rd watch of the night. At the 3rd watch of the night, he reverently entered the abbot's quarters, which was specifically the master's private room. At this significant moment, the 5th patriarch carefully covered the entire inside of the meditation room with his kasaya, his monastic robe. This was done because if the interior space wasn't adequately covered, and it's genuinely unclear whether there were any windows present at that particular time, but since he was going to teach him the Dharma, he was afraid others would find out. Actually, this is similar to how in Vajrayana Buddhism today, some people wonder why Vajrayana teachings are kept secret. Why can only a few people listen while everyone else cannot? It's not just Vajrayana. Even in the exoteric schools, for example, the profound teachings on emptiness in the Diamond Sutra, they were not transmitted to everyone either. During the process of transmission, various skillful means were also used. Although there were no signs posted or certificates issued, nor were there requirements to complete preliminary practices. There was nothing like that. But in reality, this was also a kind of skillful means. So what is a skillful means? Originally, a monk's sacred robe is truly meant to be properly worn, not merely utilized as a simple curtain or a decorative drape. However, in order to meticulously keep others from truly knowing, to effectively prevent other fellow disciples from inadvertently finding out the truth. In the deep middle of the night, when a devoted disciple would approach the revered teacher, the wise teacher would carefully use his robe to completely cover many surrounding places outside, effectively blocking everything from view so that curious onlookers could not possibly see. There was absolutely no one else around at that late hour of the night. At that precise time, he would then begin to intimately teach that one special person. What did he teach? He taught the Diamond Sutra. We have also discussed the Diamond Sutra before. So in Chan Buddhism, the Diamond Sutra and the Lankavatara Sutra are highly valued because many Chan patriarchs attained enlightenment during the process of studying and meditating on these sutras. When he was teaching the Diamond Sutra, he came to the phrase, "Let the mind arise without dwelling anywhere." At the moment he spoke this line, Master Huineng instantly attained enlightenment. He achieved complete and thorough enlightenment right then and there. He reached the state where all phenomena are inseparable from one's own nature. Let the mind arise without dwelling anywhere. When I previously lectured on the Diamond Sutra, I also relied on my own understanding. I hadn't seen how other great masters had written about it. But when I tried to explain it using my own analysis, let the mind not dwell anywhere is just as was mentioned earlier, just as the 6th patriarch himself expressed in his previous verse, the principle of originally there is not a single thing, so where can dust alight? All phenomena are, by nature, without any abiding or arising. Let the mind arise. In truth, there are no dharmas at all. But this is not the same as, say, the son of a barren woman or flowers in the sky. It's not that it doesn't exist. Within this emptiness, a clear and luminous wisdom naturally arises. This clarity and emptiness are, in fact, inseparable and not different from each other. It's not that clarity is one thing and emptiness is another, or that there is clarity without emptiness and emptiness without clarity, as if they are completely separate. Such a distinction cannot be found. If we go a step further, as described in Vajrayana teachings, the direct pointing methods of the 3 bodies are quite similar. So this can be considered a somewhat deeper explanation. When Master Huineng read up to this point, when his teacher transmitted the teaching to him up to here, in that very moment, with this verse, he attained enlightenment. Our guru, the wish-fulfilling jewel, was the same. While praying to Mipham Rinpoche and reading Direct Pointing to Mind Nature, there is a passage in Direct Pointing to Mind Nature that specifically discusses Vipassana and Samatha. Upon reading this passage, he attained complete realization in that very moment. At that instant, he achieved total and profound enlightenment. I was deeply thinking and contemplating earlier, when he carefully composed this meaningful verse himself, it was truly like a profound awakening at the break of dawn, a moment of clear realization. But by this point, it was complete enlightenment. As I mentioned the day before yesterday, the case of Chan Master Boji, at first when he initially encountered the local pork seller, it was a preliminary, almost nascent kind of awakening. But in the end, when he distinctly heard someone outside, perhaps a distant figure, singing a mournful funeral song, a truly profound realization dawned upon him. He became fully enlightened. There are two layers of meaning here, as we've discussed before. When Patrul Rinpoche first met the Venerable Jigme Gyalwa Nyugu, he experienced a dawn-like awakening. Later, when he was with Khenpo Yeshe Dorje, who said, "Old dog, come out," and the master was drinking and slapping him at the same time, it was at that moment that he became completely enlightened. At that time, it was a state of total realization, surpassing the dawn-like awakening he had previously attained before the Venerable Jigme Gyalwa Nyugu. Now it had become as radiant as the midday sun, fully manifesting. So I think here the sixth patriarch relied entirely on the confirmation of his master. As mentioned earlier, he still needed to sift rice. This is what it means. He had already attained complete enlightenment at this point. He then addressed the patriarch, saying, "Who would have thought that the nature of mind is originally pure? Who would have thought that the nature of mind is neither born nor destroyed? Who would have thought that the nature of mind is originally complete? Who would have thought that the nature of mind is unmoving? Who would have thought that the nature of mind can give rise to all phenomena? It's like in the profound and intricate great net of illusion, where there are indeed 5 distinct kinds of wondrous phenomena." Wondrous, indeed, an all-encompassing and deeply profound Buddha's secret, which is neither truly emptiness nor entirely non-emptiness, but rather something beyond such simple classifications. There are many such wondrous, on 5 in total. This meaning is very similar to what is being said here. Who would have thought that the nature of mind is originally pure? As for who would have thought, it means originally it was unexpected. He never expected that the nature of mind was originally pure, without any defilements of afflictive or cognitive obscurations. There is nothing at all. Now he is enlightened. When he attained enlightenment, he never expected that the purity he recognized was originally pure all along. It is not that today, relying on the Guru's instructions or one's own realization, it became pure. Nor is it that something impure has now become pure. It's just like what we discussed yesterday in the context of Vajrayana teachings. The pure land of Shakyamuni Buddha has always been pure. What Brahma King Spiral Hair saw was real, while what Shariputra saw was not real. It has always been pure like this. Who would have thought that the nature of mind is originally unborn and undying? He never expected that the nature he perceived has always been without birth or death, and it has always been so. It's just that in the confusion of sentient beings, it may appear as birth and death, permanence and annihilation, coming and going, and so on. There are many, many illusory phenomena. In fact, birth and death, coming and going, do not exist at all within the true nature. Who would have thought that the nature of mind is originally complete in itself? He never expected that the true nature he now recognizes, all these virtues and qualities have always been inherently complete. It's not that when I become enlightened today, suddenly it's as if sunlight shines down on my head. It's not like that. They have always been inherently complete. The ultimate Manjushri Bodhisattva, the true face of the ultimate Samantabhadra Tathagata, is simply something that is seen or realized. It has never, not even for an instant, been separate from oneself. It is already perfect, and all sentient beings possess it. Who would have thought that the nature of mind is originally unmoving? He never expected that this true nature has never wavered from the very beginning. It has never been apart, not even for an instant. It remains ever unmoving and always complete. Just as it is stated in the Uttaratantra Shastra, who would have thought that the nature of mind can give rise to all phenomena? Within such a true nature, everything that appears, be it light or wisdom, all phenomena can arise, and all virtues can also be produced. Therefore, this principle is very difficult to communicate to those of us who have no realization at all. But for those with even a little realization, it is very easy to understand. Because all Dharma, when you have not seen it yet, it truly seems that nothing can be adequately or clearly explained in a way that fully captures its essence. This profound statement is a significant verse that was eloquently spoken by the revered sixth patriarch, Huineng, precisely at the pivotal moment of his deep spiritual enlightenment and profound realization. It can also be called the Patriarch's Enlightenment Verse. After he recited this enlightenment verse before the fifth patriarch, the Patriarch, knowing that he had realized his true nature, said to Huineng, "If you do not recognize your own mind, learning the Dharma is of no benefit. But if you recognize your own mind and see your own true nature, you are called a true man, a teacher of gods and humans, a Buddha." At that time, the fifth patriarch realized that he had attained realization of his true nature and that his state was truly remarkable. Afterwards, he told Huineng, "The state of realization you have now attained is indeed excellent, and it should be so. If you do not recognize your own true mind, if you have not recognized your own true mind, then studying the Buddha Dharma, of course, does not mean it is completely meaningless. Here, the word not is added to slight, meaning that its significance is not very great. Recognizing your true mind is extremely important. If you have not recognized your true mind, what we gain on the surface are human and heavenly blessings and some other things. For example, there are some monasteries nowadays where people spend their whole lives studying the precepts. Of course, the precepts are a wish-fulfilling jewel and the foundation of all virtues. They are extremely important. But if you have not encountered the Dharma gate of recognizing your true mind and spend your whole life just studying the Vinaya, then its significance is not very great either. In our Tibetan Buddhism, there are also some who spend their entire lives studying Buddhist logic, spending 8 or 10 years just studying Buddhist logic. In fact, Buddhist logic is indeed very important for dispelling doubts and generating faith. But if you have not recognized your true mind, its significance is also not very great. Therefore, if you recognize your own true mind, which is the nature of all phenomena, regardless of what form you take, whether a layperson or a monastic, you can be called a great person, a teacher of gods and humans, or even a Buddha. If someone's realization is truly profound, they can also be called a Buddha. This depends on whether our mind can truly be pure, whether our mind can truly reach that state. On the surface, our human appearances in many aspects seem the same. But because our inner perspectives are different, because the karmic conditions from past lives are different, and the accumulation of merit in this life is different, some people are indeed able to recognize their true mind and gain some realization, while some people may not have even a bit of insight. In this case, it's as if we are trying to see forms without having eyes. There is a very good teaching on this in the Avatamsaka Sutra. Just as unclear eyes cannot see subtle forms, so too, with an impure mind, one cannot see the Dharma of all Buddhas. If the mind is not pure, if the mind lacks wisdom and purity, then one cannot perceive any of the Buddha's teachings, just like a blind person. In fact, sometimes many of us are indeed like this. If we have no insight at all, it is truly pitiable even at the time of death. At the very least, during our practice, and when it comes to these profound practices of Vajrayana and the deep practices of Chan Buddhism, we should at least plant some virtuous roots and accumulate some merit. We should take a look at our own true mind. How did the great masters of the past recognize their own true mind? We should also recognize our true mind in this way. In this regard, we need to observe the mind. At midnight, the Dharma was transmitted unknown to others, and thus the sudden teaching and the robe and bowl were passed on. He said, "You are the 6th Patriarch. Guard and cherish this well. Widely liberate sentient beings. Spread this teaching in the future, and do not let it be cut off." At midnight, the 5th Patriarch explained the Diamond Sutra to him and imparted the Dharma. This is also equivalent to the secret direct transmission in Vajrayana Buddhism. No one knew about it. He had already transmitted all the Dharma to him. Moreover, what he transmitted to him was the sudden teaching, a Dharma gate for those with sharp faculties. He passed on the sudden teaching and the robe and bowl to him in their entirety. In fact, nowadays, many people believe that they themselves have the capacity for the sudden teaching. This point is very important. At that time in Chan Buddhism, Shenshu was considered someone of gradual enlightenment, following the gradual path. This is the Dharma gate of sudden enlightenment. The 6th Patriarch's Dharma gate is especially suitable for those with exceptionally high realization. According to Shenshu, he was widely learned and advanced step by step. We also discussed this earlier. This can also be seen from his verses. At every moment, he used right knowledge and right mindfulness to polish his own mind. Nowadays, many people believe they are the sentient beings transformed by the 6th Patriarch. So first, the Buddha said that we should not be attached to anything. Everything is empty. The 4 elements are all empty. The 5 aggregates are all empty. All phenomena are empty. They say a few particularly resounding phrases to start off themselves. Completely denying all the behavior of being widely learned and knowledgeable is not very good. At that time, he said, "I pass on the Dharma and the robe to you. Now you have become the 6th Patriarch." After that, he also instructed, "Take good care of yourself and protect your mindfulness, and to always use right knowledge and right mindfulness to guard your mind." It's not that having become the 6th Patriarch, everything is already accomplished. It's not that you can just ignore everything. It's not like that. You still need to protect yourself with right knowledge and right mindfulness. The great masters of the past have also said, Your view should be as vast as space, but your actions should be as meticulous as fine powder in terms of acceptance and rejection. And also, benefit countless sentient beings and spread the teachings into the future. After attaining enlightenment, what should you do? It's not that you're supposed to just sit there happily all the time. The main task, just as Patrul Rinpoche once said, what is the main purpose after attaining Buddhahood? It is to benefit all sentient beings. This also addresses the question, what should you do after enlightenment? It's not that after practicing Zen, you just sit in the meditation hall every day. You must strive to liberate countless sentient beings, and the Dharma must continue to be passed down, spreading in all directions. We often say, and His Holiness often says as well, what is the purpose of practice and attainment? One is to benefit sentient beings, and the other is to widely propagate the Dharma. In fact, the true great masters of Chan Buddhism ultimately rely on certain principles. When the fifth patriarch gave his instructions, there were also three main points. The first is that you must continue to carefully guard your own mind and thoughts. Don't think that just because you are now the sixth patriarch, you can act carelessly and disregard the Dharma. He also required that you must always protect your mind with right understanding and right mindfulness. The second is to benefit sentient beings. The third is that the Dharma must be continuously passed down without interruption. The Dharma should never be cut off. We might not have enough time today, so we can continue this in the next class. Some people think that the Dharma lineage of Chan Buddhism seems to have been broken, but the Dharma lineage has not been broken. It's just that the passing of the robe and bowl, these external formalities, were individually discontinued. At that time, it was decided that these should no longer be passed down. The Dharma of Chan Buddhism has continued to be propagated up to the present day. This is because of the great vows and vast aspirations of the great masters at that time. That is why there are still so many practitioners and so many people today who have a connection with Chan Buddhism and attain realization. This is also the reason why. All right, let's stop here for today.
Bandara Banma Sodargye